Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditam Astuma Vidvishavahai. Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great vigor and energy. May our study be illumined. Does not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So if you want to see me, you can shift to another one. Or here, maybe. Even here. Dermot, you want to sit here?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I thought you were.
Yes, yes. It's very easy to be steady, to be stable and content when things go well. But I think by now, even after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, hopefully you'll know that life is not made to be like that. What we call nature or life is called prakriti, a thing that is a little rough. And if it wasn't asymmetric, if it wasn't, if it was completely symmetric, then life wouldn't work. We can take this life as a kind of school. Sometimes people put a theistic view on it and say, God is testing us. Well, I wouldn't think that that is the case. That doesn't make much sense, really. There's no maliciousness in God as far as we know. But certainly, life is a test. Life is an opportunity for passing unlimited examinations, for learning as much as we can, given the time. How much time do we have? Also unlimited time. So I remind you of that story about Brihaspati, not Brihaspati, it was Indra who demanded that there be a new palace after a great victory of the deities. The divine architect was hard-pressed to meet up with the demands of Indra, because Indra, every time he built a palace, he wanted a courtyard. Then on top of the courtyard, he wanted some extension. And then after the extension, he wanted something more palatial, 3-4 floors added. And after a while, it was a difficulty and required some intervention. So Vishnu himself appeared as a Brahmin boy and said to Indra, "Of course I knew you, I knew all your predecessors." "What predecessors?" said Indra. He said, "Well, all the predecessors that have gone before you, I've known them all. How can you know all of them?" He said, "You see this line of ants that are marching across the floor?" He laughed. "If you look closely at these thousands and thousands and thousands of ants, that's how many Indras have been there before you." So like that, we have this concept that this nature, this prakriti, has an unlimited span and runs on causation. But what kind of causation produces adversity for us? There will be adversity anyway, because of the roughness of nature itself. Otherwise it doesn't work. When we repeat this shanti, 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 peace, 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 we're really catering for 3 types of causes in terms of our adversity. One is self-caused. That we can prevent. Of course, to some extent, we are inheriting what is called prarabdha karma, the consequences of previous actions, that we have to work it out. But there's no reason why we should cause ourselves any future misery. But we have to learn to watch in a very, very astute way what's going on in the mental field. We'll come to that shortly, because the next kind of causation will be causation that is caused by others, a problem that is caused by others. It's beyond our control. How will we deal with it? And then the third cause is what we might call just nature itself. Calamities happen. There is always a cause, of course, that we can find as a natural cause. For example, there's a tsunami or a great, great disaster somewhere. Some hurricane is there. It's just the nature of geology. It's the nature of the spin of the earth. It's the nature of the unpredictability of the weather. And so, but somewhere, if we analyze all the factors, we'll find some causation there. The important thing is not what is the cause of the adversity. The important thing is, how do we manage it? How do we deal with it? How do we cultivate a frame of mind that has an equanimity in all circumstances, that never gets ruffled? Now, most of us really are atheists. That's a shock statement to give to you, because many of us are theists at our convenience. But you see, if we were completely theistic, if we had total faith in a supreme that we call God, then we would have absolutely no fear, and we'd have no doubt, nor would we have any temptation. We would have absolute trust in the flowingness of the manifested world that we call nature. We'd have total faith that all the resources required for our growth are all provided, just as a faith is there in terms of a flower. We don't know if it has any direct thing called faith, but certainly it responds. It responds to all the environmental factors of nature, the water, the sunshine, and so on. Upstairs in the windowsill, we have a tulsi plant. And yesterday it was not looking very happy. It was under some kind of adversity. I gave it a little water. Today it's happy and green. So in the midst of all this adversity, can we find a way of dealing with life by shifting our attitude and putting a sense of faith in there, and not blaming when things go wrong? When things go right, we praise ourselves. When things go wrong, we blame God. A poor unsuspecting entity sitting there waiting for the next email. How dare you cause this on me, and so on. All of these things. That's a crude and primitive form of it. So when we look at all these factors, we see that adversity is something we have to deal with a great deal of what we call titiksha, forbearance, patience. But more than anything, we require faith. And to gather faith, we require the absolute experience of certainty. We have to take the things that we normally take for granted and look at them properly and cultivate a sense of thankfulness. And in cultivating a sense of thankfulness and love, we are also cultivating some strength, because strength is the prime virtue that we require. In the midst of adversity, it is this strength that has to be gathered up, consolidated, and asserted. Where do we get the strength from? It is well known that if somebody is trapped under a car, superhero strength can be established and manifested. We can lift up the greatest weights if we have to. There's the true story of a person who was mountain climbing, and their hand got caught, or their arm got caught, and they couldn't remove it, and they were far away from anybody else. And so they had no alternative. They had to saw or cut off their arm, climb down, and then slam the remnants of the arm in the door so that the bleeding would stop, and drive himself to the hospital. Such cases are known, that we have resources within us that we'd hardly be able to find under normal circumstances. It takes extraordinary circumstances to bring out this strength. Where does the strength come from? It comes from the fact that intrinsically it is there already. We just have to access it. What is a useful thing, of course, is to understand it in the context of philosophy. How do we view the world? What is our worldview? Naturally, there can be nothing more in terms of adversity than the situation we find in the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is suffering from a nervous breakdown with the prospect of killing those that he was not just fond of and grew up with, but those he respected, his gurus, his teachers, those who taught him archery, those who taught him all the moral and ethical precepts that are necessary in human life. Not just admired by him, but admired by his whole race. Great, great heroes. People of outstanding qualities and temperament. And so his solution was a biological solution. Biological solution means that we can withdraw from the circumstance, we can run away, or we can head straight into it, crashing through a gate, or we can stand mesmerized by it, or we can apply some different formula. If there are thorns in the road, don't complain, put tough boots on. The boots are there, all the equipment is there. If there are potholes in the road, then use a four-wheel drive. And there's a phrase in Irish, it is better to light a candle than curse the dark. But inevitably, some aspects can creep into the psyche. For example, despondency. The first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is all about that. Naturally, the prospect of what he's facing, Arjuna goes into a state of despondency. Arjuna Vishara Yoga is the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita for a reason. Many people gloss over it. The fact is, we learn much more from pain and painful situations than we learn from situations that are in our favor. It's easy to be happy and content when things are all rosy and fine. It's easy to smile in the warmth of the sunshine, as opposed to the cold depth of the snow pressing down on you. So in the case like Arjun's, we find that the comforter must first help the sufferer to get back self-confidence. And where the self-confidence comes from is the fact that, first of all, we don't have to yield to impotence. We don't have to yield to weakness. We have to question ourselves, just as Krishna questions Arjuna. Where has this weakness or this faint-heartedness or even this cowardice come from? And we have to assert that this condition is unworthy of us and it's disgraceful. Two ways are there of behaving: childishness or childlike. Childlike is the preferred. Childlike denotes a sense of innocence, but childish is denoted by selfishness, a demanding attitude. And so, stand up. That's the exhortation. That's the first thing we have to learn. Face it on the basis that the highest conclusion in the Vedanta philosophy says the only thing that is there is what we call God, and if we don't see it, this is a form of atheism, lack of belief. So it is that if we come across any so-called adversity, whether it is physical, whether it's psychological or emotional, the first thing we have to do is to stand back and declare, I won't stand for this weakness of mind. I'll assert my inherent strength. I'll stand up. On what basis? On the basis that within me is the great Lord of the universe. And the Lord knows that confusion, of course, such as we find in Arjuna's, can't be removed without a clear perception of this immutable, glorious nature of Atman, this divine self within us. So to one who habitually abides in the glory, there is no adverse condition on the other side, because it is only Lord standing there, dressed up in that way. There's nothing to fear, nor is there anything to be angry about, nothing to respond in terms of doubt, nothing to be affected in terms of temptations. A full theistic attitude, full of faith and confidence, can be asserted in this circumstance. And so, nothing can be, in Arjuna's case, nothing can be slain, nor is there a slayer. That's the only attitude that we can take. In my life, like as in everybody else's life, we've had to face difficult circumstances. Now, before Zimbabwe became Zimbabwe, there was a country called Rhodesia. And in that Rhodesia, whether you agree with the politics of the day or not, but there was a cohesiveness in a difficult situation where international sanctions were imposed. And there was a consolidation among all the citizenry. There was a solidity, there was an inner strength, there was a defiance that can only be described as commensurate with the British attitude in World War II, when London was attacked mercilessly in a blitzkrieg by Adolf Hitler. And the fighting spirit was led by leaders of the time, and the whole of the nation became consolidated in a united purpose. This is what calamity does. We take, for example, a current condition, our epidemic, COVID-19. How, as soon as it came out and the restrictions were announced, the whole of society started consolidating, encouraging each other. Our own organization here was instrumental, partly, at least in efforts by the School of Ecumenics in the Trinity College and the Dublin City Interfaith Forum and other avenues of making statements that would lift everybody up. And we ourselves put out, as everybody else did, extra efforts to try and encourage people. Come on, it's not as bad as you think. We can get through it together. Individually we can't do it, but together we can do it. We can support each other in it. And behind it all, this confidence, a lot of the universe is standing there in an already united condition, beaming. It's not a terrible curse on humanity. It's not a cruel joke on us. It's not an imposition of the wrath of God, nothing like that. Because a virus is part of life also. It's a living entity. And the way that fish populations are controlled in the oceans is through viruses. And the fact is that if we encourage world trade in animal products, then we'll get certain things. Mad cow's disease is an example. So the idea of eating things that create stress hormones and uric acid in us, thinking that it is something packaged and comes in a supermarket as opposed to something slaughtered in an abattoir. If you want to be a vegetarian, visit an abattoir and see how things look. And you'll be appalled. There was a survey experiment done. People wanted to know that if animals are lined up, will they generate stress hormones? And they did. Will they generate uric acid? And they did. Then if you eat that, will it create stress in you? And it did. And will it create increase of purines or uric acid in you? Yes, it does. So we have resources. At the moment, about 2/3 of the planet today is under a condition called desertification. That is, grasses are drying up, sand is taking over. There is a wonderful person in Zimbabwe who has a revolutionary idea, and he feels he can reverse this desertification by using the resources that we have. An unusual solution to the problem. We think that there's a great ecological disaster when we have animals, too many cows, for example. His solution is, please increase the cows. Please increase all the population, the agricultural population that we have, because if you manage them correctly in a holistic way, what you will do is you will concentrate them in a certain area for a specific period of time. You'll corral them, and there their hooves will dig up the dry soil, and their droppings will enrich the soil, and they will remove all the dry grass that should be removed, and new shoots will come up. Anyway, his experimentation has shown remarkable results. And I recently came to discover that he was on a TED Talk where his ideas are now being taken seriously. But more years and years and years, he had this idea and researched and proved it in a dry land such as Zimbabwe. And it's not that drought will cause up a dried up land and desertification, no. It is actually imitating, making domestic animals a surrogate for wild animals, because it's what wild animals do. Wild animals are part of the ecology that do all this for us. And now that we are reducing these wild animal populations and increasing domestic animals, we can take advantage of it. It's a unique kind of solution. So why am I telling you this? Is because it's an illustration of how we can use our ingenuity and transform adversities into something glorious. Just by a change of our attitude. Just by seeing things in a correct perspective, in a better way. This universe is a school of adversity. It is for our learning. It must be remembered that the resources for our learning is presented to us here. There is a collection of sayings under different subjects about adversity from the monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. I'd like to read a few. Swami Purnananda, for example, he says, at the time of happiness, everyone can remain calm, can discriminate, but one is established in it only. One can remain so even in adversity. At that time, man has to summon up great strength. And if he yields to weakness, then grief will overwhelm him, will in fact altogether ruin him. One of the greatest difficulties that we have to face is the prospect of death and dying and bereavement. And there is a wonderful whole series of thoughts on this from Swami Shivananda, Tarak Maharaj. So I'll read an extract from some of these. This is my daughter. Recently her husband passed away. This was a retired judge who came to Mahapurush Maharaj. She is very much grieved and has not yet been able to get over it. That is why I have brought her to you. That is the way of the world, my child, says Swami Shivananda. Can't deny death. It's just the way of the world. We have to accept it. Just as in the COVID virus, it is the way of the world. It's not a major tragedy. Worse pandemics have been there. Spanish flu has been there. Black plague has been there, wiping out easily 2/3 of the European population in one stroke. Sorrow, bereavement, pain, and anguish. This is what the world consists of. Real joy or peace is very rare in this world, and this round of birth and death, that is ours. No one can check. They're just stating a reality. Man has no hand in it. God alone is responsible for the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of this world. The unevenness of this world is how it is. And it is by His will that all beings are born into it. And He keeps them as long as He wants, and He takes them away whenever He wishes. We should know for certain that God is the Lord of birth, maintenance, and death. It is He who sends souls here to become parents, wives, children, friends, and relatives. This is a fact that we forget. We are playing a drama. And in a drama, for example, in the play Hamlet, one day we could play the part of Othello, another play we could play the part of some other entity, we could play different parts. We could even play a woman's part at a different occasion, shave the beard off and play that part. All these are possible. But you see, there's some unconscious condition that always asserts my own nature as I play these parts. Some small area of me still asserts, even having played these parts, you're still your own self, your own immortal self, it's there. And if we then take this life to be a kind of game, with only one player there, philosophically, only this world, Lord of the universe, responsible for this creation and maintenance and dissolution, then we have to understand that the worthwhileness of a game is that it should not be very fast or very easy. What kind of game of rugby is there if it's not tough? Let it be tough. I can take a tennis bat and then give a very hard service to the other side. And the other person can't take it. So I get the first point. And then I can hit this side again and get the score. And he does the same thing and I do the same thing. It's a service game, shot at such a vast speed that it's always even. And there are IBM machines that measure the velocity of these great services. But what kind of game is that? No one will be interested in watching such a game because nobody returns the ball. And the audience will say, we don't want to see that kind of match. 30, 40 times, lightning flash, the ball goes just scraping the net. And right and left and line placing and net placing here and there, all of this is going on. And the audience applauds every time, but supposing one ball takes 30 minutes. And then you say, gentlemen, the game will be continued for the next 2 hours or discontinued. See one ball being hit up so high, everybody goes away, say, please come back, we're having an interval. What kind of game is that? One ball is starting in 1 hour and finished. That's a nice game to see how accurate these people are in their skill in tennis playing. They seem to be possessed equally of the spirit of tennis. Ultimately, of course, the ball must go. The skill is in a volley, and people look at it and get intrigued. And with every difficult ball, a gasp. And there's no single person that takes 2 games successively, and then it comes to set. Some of these games will last for hours and hours. At Wimbledon, for example. So, and then the set will never end. See, if it just carries on like that, carries on like that, carries along that, if the set ends, the set will never end. If the set ends, then that's it. But if the set will never end, if it goes on continuously like that, it's called reincarnation. And the replay is quite good. Always deuce, deuce, that kind of game is there. It's worth seeing a match like that. A fast ending thing is not a game at all. An easy game is not a game at all. And so there's a great value in this adversity. It becomes something like an adventure. So there can be a prayer at the end of the day, Lord, I have one complaint. What is that? You never sent me an adversity today. You never sent me a curveball. You never gave me opportunity to play the game that was so exciting enough for people to watch with no immediate conclusion, always deuce, 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 and then the other man gets the point, and then I get the point. And there's no conclusion to this game. So don't ask why all this adversity came or why these obstacles came. Why not? You're playing a game. You think of it like that, a basic philosophy. So you really need to tell God, Lord, you don't play on my side now. That's no good. You ask Lord to please stand, and you stand ceremoniously with a bat. That's not a game. He being omnipresent, he'll go that side, go this side, return the ball all the time. That's not a kind of game. You put the Lord on the other side and say, when it comes to winning the trophy, I go and show my hand, and myself and my partner scored the victory, but I didn't play at all, that kind of game. So you give me the hardest shot and we'll play a game of singles. You put it in this corner, I'll learn the skill of returning it. Once that's done, put it in this corner, I'll learn the skill of returning that. Like that, you learn to play the game. Take it as a wonderful adventure. Then there's no fear in it. There's no request, please stop this adversity. This is the strength that Arjuna had, or ultimately had, after 18 chapters was there. And this is what the Lord is saying, come on, this is all a game, since what you call birth, life, and death is just not really there. It's only your perception of it. When you play the game, inevitably you have to play it. Don't run away from it. Face it with all the strength you can muster and all the skill you can muster. So that when I define yoga, it is skill in action. Playing the game with great excitement, with great determination, great love. A game of love with the Lord of the universe. No defeat in it. And in a game like that, it doesn't matter who wins and who doesn't win. It's a game. It doesn't matter the success or failure. It's a game. Now this is the non-dual system, the final conclusion in the Vedanta philosophy, which has this practical application in dealing with adversity. So that you can say that adversity can be your great, great friend, not your enemy. We learn much more from pain than we do from pleasure. We learn much more from discomfort than we do from comfort. Why should we ask for an easy life, an easy world? Knowing that, we can easily, with the great skill given, learn the art of playing this game of life. There's a fundamental book that I recommend to people. I lent it to somebody and they borrowed it on a permanent basis. So no chance of returning. The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scoven Shin. And I think one of you has it, isn't it? Has a copy of it, yeah?
My own copy, yeah.
Yes, no, that's okay. I know it's your copy, it's fine. And will ever remain the same.
I have a spare, but I can bring it in.
No, that's all right.
I have it selected.
Okay, fine. So very early on, there was this idea. Play the game of life. This is the whole concept of Leela. There was a book by Reynold Johnson called Imprisoned Splendor, a great scientist. he says the only sense I can make of this whole world is if we take up the Indian concept of lila, a play. So as long as we apply this and apply this whole idea of a game, and in the Bhagavad Gita, the whole gamut of this leading up to this conclusion is there. Like a good teacher, it doesn't tell us immediately, only step by step, tells us up front the principle of it, and then step by step leads us to this final conclusion and leads us away from a fearful situation where we're inclined to be atheists. That is, we're inclined to run away from the situation. Let us rather run toward it and find the fun in it. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, from my own life experience, I've learned to run toward the adversity, not away from it. Taking it as the Lord dressed up in this way. Take it as, have the strength of a hero. Take a heroic attitude. And steadily increase your faith by increasing steadily meditation. Of course, we have to accept everyone gets depressed momentarily. That's a fact of life. But we have all the resources to overcome it. And no life goes in vain. Even the Bhagavad Gita will tell us that no effort and no life will ever go in vain. I often think of the great courage and determination that Robert Bruce had in the midst of depression and seeming defeat, taking refuge in a cave, observing the spider, how it creates a web, climbs, falls, doesn't give up, continues, makes a new one. Come on, makes a new one. So we have to have tremendous patience. We have to have determination. We have to have all of these qualities. And we have to use the very technique of the most ancient psychologists that we know of, namely Krishna, in the face of the greatest adversity in the battle, and lifting a person up, raising a person up, simply by pointing out, hey, there's more to you than meets the eye. Shake off this cowardice and discover your own inner strength and confidence and go forward. And then behind it, understand you're playing the game of life, a play of delight with the Lord of the universe. Why would you want it to stop? Going back to some of the writings that these great apostles of Ramakrishna would give, Swami Purnananda used to say, the body knows its pain. Oh, my mind, be at peace. See what a beautiful statement it is. Pain and anguish belong to the body, and he who dwells within the body is not affected by them. He is bliss itself. There is no need to be anxious about it. Whatever be the Lord's pleasure is definitely for the good of all. So supposing we shift our attitude and repeat the formula that requires repeating over and over and over again. And that is, in our mental frame, we have to promote sattva all the time. Goodness and truth. Even fear is selfish, isn't it? Doubt is selfish. Temptation is selfish. All of these things are orientated toward your own physical self. To elevate the mind with qualities of strength and truth and beauty and goodness and love and harmony, every moment of the day, what will it do to every layer and aspect of the human person? The mind will be enlightened. The intellect will be enlightened, knowing that there's only one intellect, cosmic mind, at the end of the day. Once you really understand and know this, you'll know that it is a cosmic mind that shifts everything in your favor or against you. With this in mind, make sure that the mind is sufficiently enlightened. At every turn, we can observe a kind of game going on. What is the characteristic of the waves happening in the mind at any moment in time? Assess them for what they are and replace them immediately. Saturate the mind with this quality of sattva. We have to repeat this over and over again, because that is the only spiritual discipline that is available to us. Sattva neutralizes everything else, cleanses the mind, prepares the mind for a revelation of what is already there, your own immortal self. With this, you play the game. Play the game of sattva against rajas and tamas. And learn to take all the material of life that seems to be an adversity, that is against us, and take it as a friend. Come on, a welcome thing. How does a flower grow without manure? And in the example I gave you, you're taking the resources available, increasing the number of animals to simulate the wild animals. Because wherever the wild animals go, fresh grasses also grow. And as we know, fresh grasses and forests and so on, and what have you, they then have the tendency to create water and evaporate that condenses as rainfall. Rainfall increases. Can you see the merit of such a cycle? It's just an example of somebody taking the resources around and ingeniously, creatively, turning it in our favor. Man is a multi-purpose personality that has the capacity to transform discord into harmony. Let us learn the art of doing that and make adversity our friend. Swami Purnananda says this: throw away all fear and anxiety. Think, we are the children of God. Then weakness will find no loophole to creep in. Even if you take that attitude, I'm a child of God. Then if God is looking after me, what will I fear? How will I doubt? How will my faith diminish? Away, he says, with all the quarrels and factions. We have come here for only a very short time. Why such anxiety for tidying things up? Let others do as they like. Fear, worries, and anxieties dwell where there are hypocrisy, evil motives, and selfishness. Again, Swami Purnananda will say, just see, our God is only a verbal affair. A little meditation, a little japa. This is a poor sort of life. The heart must burst hungering for him. An intense anguish must fill it, and life should seem to go on or to go out without him. Only then it will be right. A sea is no more than a mud puddle when you have crossed it. All anxiety and trouble are just at the initial stages of spiritual life. Swami Brahmananda, in his great wisdom, says, it is no easy thing to dedicate oneself, heart and soul, to the Lord. Many people boast, I have surrendered myself and my all to God. I do only what he tells me to do. But it's just words. Because if we observe their lives, we see differently. For the good they do, they claim the credit and they boast of their achievements, even inwardly, I might add. But when adversity or trouble overtakes them, they cry out against the Lord and blame him for their misfortunes. Swami Ramakrishnananda says this. Actually, very few of us believe in God all the time. How do we know this? Because we allow anxieties and fears to arise in our minds. It's equivalent to lack of faith in God. If we have fear, it means we only have faith in hereditary. We only have faith in the characteristics of the various ancestors on left and right that came through X and Y chromosomes, physical. So actually fear is lack of faith in God. Because we allow anxieties and fears to arise in our minds, your anxieties and worries come from egotism and selfishness. We allow these. Let go with your little self and they will disappear. When worries and perplexities rise in the mind, it shows we have ceased to believe in God, and in that He is caring for us. If we have real faith in God, we can never grow anxious. We can never grow anxious. Blessed is the man who has faith. He is the happiest of all men because he is freed from all anxiety. Anxiety is a future-orientated thing. You should not be anxious of the future. Whatever takes place here on this earth is for our good, for all things are disposed by that Supreme. In the meantime, it should be our duty to be dutiful. It is through sheer ignorance that we bring on ourselves all sorts of groundless anxieties. See how the Bhagavad Gita says, to work you have the right, but not to the fruits, not to the effects. The leader should be a person having not the least egoism. Not I, but thou. This should be one's motto. And remember this and go on working and you are sure to come out victorious. Don't try to have everything done all at once. It's the greatest relief when we get rid of egotism. It is as if a heavy burden rolled off. At once all our doubts and fears, anxieties and troubles disappear. Whenever anxiety arises in you, you become an atheist. You do not believe in God and that He cares for you. If you have real faith, you can never grow anxious. I repeat that. If you have real faith, you can never grow anxious. Do your duty, never grow anxious, and do not think of the future. The future creates anxiety. And if you ask why, you're reviewing the past. Why is a past question? Why not? What next? Is a better question. Swami Shivananda says again, certainly it won't do to be dejected. Not to be dejected so soon like that, because we get dejected very easily. You must have faith, you must have patience. You have to be persistently up and doing. What will you gain by dejection and moaning just because you cannot achieve anything with a little effort? We give up too easily. Swami Purnananda relates this personal incident. He said, once I felt a little dejected. This is in relation to a disciple of Swami Purnananda's. And the Swami noticed it and said, when we were living at the old mutt, now many years ago, it happened once that I was very sad. I could not make any progress for some time and everything looked dark to me. I was walking up and down on the flat roof of the monastery. It was evening and the moon was hidden by clouds. Sleep was impossible for me. I was so unhappy. Then suddenly from behind the clouds the moon emerged and everything looked bright and beautiful. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, see, the moon was there all the time, but I could not see her. So the Atman is also ever present, shining in its own glory, but I did not see it. The cloud of ignorance stood between the Atman and my intellect, overshadowing my mind. And at once I felt strong again, my doubts all gone. Just look at that process. First of all, observe the condition of the mind. Secondly, observe the beauty in nature that previously was hiding. And can you see how the Lord as nature reveals itself to him to uplift him? Thinking that there's no coincidence in life, we have to take on this idea that this was a revelation. On another occasion, the Swami told me, says the disciple of Purnananda, how many years ago when he was traveling on foot as a sannyasi, The thought was tormenting him that he was living a useless vagabond life. Everyone is doing something in this world, but what am I doing? He thought. It became very painful, and I could not shake off this thought. I thought of myself as a little insignificant, useless creature. I was utterly dejected and threw myself down under a tree. There I fell asleep and I had a dream. I saw myself lying on the ground, and then, to my surprise, I saw that my body began to expand in all directions. It went on expanding and expanding. There was no end to it. At last it seemed to cover the whole world. Then it occurred to me, see how great you are. You are covering the whole world. Why do you think your life is in any way useless? We can even use this as a kind of meditation and replay that for ourselves. And then he goes on to say, a grain of truth will cover the whole world of delusion. Get up, be strong, and realize the truth. That is the greatest life. I awoke and jumped up, and all my doubts had vanished. All my doubts had vanished in a single instant. Swami Trigunatitananda would say, never think I can't have it. I am weak. Whenever any dejection sets in, remember that saying of the Lord in the Gita, yield not to unmanliness, in the very first opening parts of chapter 1. And Swami Ramakrishna again says, be always of good cheer. Never allow sorrow or dejection to take possession of your soul, which is ever free and blissful. The other night we were here and reminiscing about the construction phase of this building here. And some of you sitting here were involved in it. But the delight we had in community activity, in transforming a building that was a little ramshackle with a bad atmosphere into something glorious and worthwhile for the good of a community. And with the COVID now and things easing up, we also have to see how we can reintroduce people into this ashram. I'm sitting here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people online, and we have 4 people sitting here. So that's all right, but we have empty chairs all around. We have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, another 7, 8 chairs available to us here. Maybe 7 chairs available to us here. So we should take advantage of the resources that we have around us. And it sustains a sense of community and a sense of cheerfulness. One great complaint that my colleagues on the Dublin City Interfaith Forum have is that people have now become felt much more isolated, and the advantage of community gatherings in temples and churches has been lost to a great extent over this period of celebrating the birth of Ganesh. We had the opportunity to go to the Vedic Hindu Cultural Center, which is a temple here in Dublin, and it was wonderful to see and feel once more regular community activities, even with the cautions of the COVID restrictions taking place. I think many of the centers, for example, in France, have opened up in this way as well. And so there's a sense of normality returning in the circumstances, albeit with a healthy semblance of caution. So we always have to be of good cheer. Swami Sharananda said, you have written that there have been lapses 10 times before in the past. He's writing to a devotee. If there be 10 times more in the future, you should not be dejected. Constantly brooding about things of which you have no control will cause more harm than good. This will surely jeopardize your spiritual life. Dirt cannot be washed by dirt. Even charcoal loses its blackness when it comes in contact with fire. And similarly, lust cannot remain when the image of God pervades the mind. Swami Purnananda says, never think, I cannot do this, I am weak. Whenever you are in dejection, always remember what the Lord has declared in the Gita. Do not be under the spell of unmanliness. Does not befit you. We heard the quotation previously in a different form. And shake off this mean faint-heartedness. Get up, O hero, be a hero indeed. Swami Vijnananda would say, when the mind is overcome with evil thoughts, it becomes dejected and inactive, like a mouse in the grip of a cat. But why should you suffer to be like that? In situations like that, you should summon up within you the strength of a herd and shake off dejection. Without perseverance, nothing great can be achieved. So it goes on like that. So, in short, there's a great benefit in adversity. Adversity is our great friend. We have all the resources around us to deal with it and to get around it, not to put charge into it head first. No, nor should we run away. But we have to learn a way around it as part of our game of life and how to play it. We should play a game of tennis with the Lord, singles, asking him, come on, give me your curveball. Could I not put a mental movement is a good question that we can ask on the ground that from fullness it is beaming out. That's where our faith will come from. Because a thing is useful doesn't mean that a useful thing is the right philosophy. It's an economic system. For every want, there's a supply, and we have to be confident that for every want, the supply is there, matching it on the other side. We have to take it for granted that that is the case. And then we also have to understand, am I a thing full of wants? Or am I fullness? Am I the full supply? Is the full supply not within me and around me? That conviction has to be there. So with these few words, we'll finish off there. And Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, 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 peace.